Hello, my name is Abhinav, and I'm going to talk about unlocking linked data in org mode. So, like a lot of you, use Emacs and org mode for keeping a lot of my data, personal information. For example, if I'm trying to, write journal entries, it's most likely going to be an org mode file. If I'm trying to save bookmarks or save links, again, they go into an org mode file. Now, I was doing that earlier, but last year, around last year, I started to use these specialized applications. So, for example, if I'm trying to save bookmarks, I'm going to use a bookmark manager. I specifically was using Raindrop for it. What happened with that is that it allowed me to save bookmarks. Let's say, when I'm on Go, I'm on a mobile phone, I can just, open my Android app and then save links there. I can also annotate and do other things that you can do on bookmarks. Similarly, for reading, let's say papers and PDFs, I would use Zotero. For keeping notes about people, I'll use a tool called Monica CRM. Now, all these tools, their aim is to kind of do one thing really well, but they kind of work in their own silos, and it's very hard to link data from one to another. For example, if you have a journal application, you can say things like, hey, today I met this person, and then, this person gave me this recipe, whatever, but you know that the person information is still kept in a different application and the recipe information is still kept in a different application. You have to like do a lot of work to kind of make them come together. So one thing that happened also last year was that I started using org-room a lot. So org-room is a Zettelkasten system, which allows you to have linked nodes. I'll not go too much into that detail, but basically with org-room you can, have a lot of these text-based files that you make anyway, and then keep them connected, and then like have this knowledge base that you can build around your information, your data. Um, while it's a good system, I still feel like it's not very pro on providing very good amount of tools for working with links. I'll show two kind of things. First is that I'll show how my current knowledge base looks like, what kind of workflow I kind of use to save, let's say, any information, or how do I connect new nodes. um, the other is that because while this information base is like working out well for me, I still want all of my external usages to be to be reflected back into this database of text files. So if I'm browsing something, I still want that thing to be saved in my org mode files, whether I'm browsing on Android, or I'm browsing on, let's say, Firefox somewhere on a laptop. So I'll show those two things here. It's going to be a short talk, and then yeah, hope you like it. Okay, so we'll start with this thing. So this is a simple org roam node. It's a dummy node. I've made like a lot of dummy nodes here just to kind of show. So maybe some of those information will be sparse, but I hope I convey the meaning clearly. Okay, so here, if you usually, if you're just using plain org mode, you just have this file, right? There's nothing else. Now, if you are using org-roam, you can do something called org-roam buffer toggle, which will show you, a few of those connected nodes. Now, usually the connections are shown here. They only show you backlinks. So basically, any other node that has linked to this node is going to be shown there. But in my extension, you can see more things. For example, here in this case, you can see, first of all, we show both links. So any link from this node to something else will also be shown there. Any link from that node to something else will also be shown there. So you can see that is one thing. The other thing is that all these links are categorized in type of nodes. For example, when this node specifically right now is of kind book, tag is one identifier for it, but there are like other ways to identify a kind of node. But this is connected to another node which is of a kind person. So as you can see there, person A asked me to read this book, so that link is shown there in a very rich format, so you have like more information about the link in this. The other thing that you can see there is that there are also links which are not existing right now, but they could be, possibly interesting for me. So these are similar nodes. So these, you can see the scores of similarity, and then other nodes like book on mathematics, which is again another dummy node that I made for this demo. Now these are nodes which again I can just go in there and I can see if maybe they make sense, or if I can just like make those connections explicitly. So let's try some other node here. So let's say, so this is a node of a recipe. It's Bombay sandwich. It's a recipe I've made. Now if you go here on the right, you can see there's like some things on some person liking the sandwich. There are some related notes also, similar notes which I have not linked. Plus there are some journal entries. Now I use Ogrom daily to kind of write down journal entries. And then what I have to do there is basically just write whatever I want, and then just make those links to this node. So doing that, I can see that there were 2 days where I made Bombay sandwich, and I had some observations around it, which you can see here. Right, same for person. Let's say if you go to person B, you can see that this person has again linked to person A, and there's like some information around it. Plus there are some similar nodes there. This works really well. The similarity function works really well if you're basically trying to go to bookmarks that I've saved. So for example, here's a bookmark that I saved, which is Google at Interspeech 2023. Now this bookmark is a blog post from Google AI team. Basically it tells what research publications they had in this conference. Now if you go to the similar notes here, you can see very similar blog posts from Google's team for other conferences that they attended, right? Now this is very helpful for me, especially when I'm like reading something later. So I like save a lot of links together, and then when I'm deciding to read something, I just open this and then see how everything is connected, what else I have saved, should I read something else or not. One interesting feature I was realizing I should try out is that if I go to this node, which is person B, you can see that while I'm linking this to person A, I also have some context around that. So I've written specifically uncle of person A. Now, if you have a semantic wiki, you will have a typed link where you don't have a plain link. You also have a type of the link. So in this case, the type of the link could be, hey, it's like uncle colon whatever that link is. But I don't want to like go into that much detail, and don't want to like learn how to link things, learn what kind of types I can make. So I can just write things in plain text. So I've written this in plain text. What I can do now is I can just search for links like this. For example, I can just do something like family members. Now, this will show me all the links which have a context which makes sense uh, as family members. So basically, this is a semantic search on links, on the context of the links, and then it kind of gives me what I want here. For example, here in this demo, I just had like one node, one link which had this uncle relationship. So that kind of works out. Now let's just try another search. For example, let's say if I'm typing check before meeting. So these are now again links where I have written something where I kind of should do something before meeting someone. So for example, the first one you can see, there's a person called meeting person. It's a demo node again, and I've written one note about one connection here is basically saying that, hey, read this link before you go to meet them, right? So this also been very helpful for me. There are like few patterns where I kind of feel this works out well. As I keep making more of the links and keep writing more context around the link, this kind of works out really helpful. This becomes very helpful for me. Okay, so the other few things are, how do I like work with systems outside Emacs, right? So the first thing is that I haven't found anything that works really well for saving bookmarks. When I'm on my Android phone. So I had to make a new application, and it's called Pile Android. Now this application basically lets me do whatever I was doing with Raindrop, which was a bookmark manager. So I can open links, I can read stuff in Firefox on my browser on my Android phone, and then I can save all of that in my Ogrom database. Ogrom database here means the Ogrom files that I have, because again these are plain text file. I can sync them through mobile phone to my desktop and laptop and everything else. So that's one place where I kind of stop going to a new application. I just basically ingest everything in my org room setup. The other thing is that when I'm browsing on my laptop, I still want to collect all the data inside my org room system. So here's something which I called org room Sidekick. Now what you can do here is that, let's say if you want to search for something, so you can basically do a search normally, which is going to do a web search. But if you call org roam sk, which is Sidekick, it will do a search on all of your org roam nodes. So now this search is basically using recall. So recall kind of indexes all the plain text and does a full text search for you. But this is really helpful, because when I'm searching for something and I still want to know that, hey, hey, I have saved some of those links earlier. So can I, like, see them back? And then it's a very good way to kind of not lose track of what you have already saved. The other thing I can do is, like, I can also, again, since I have saved a project in my org room, I can basically call again Sidekick again, and I can see a note for that. That note here specifically is tracking my tasks for this project. And other than tasks, again, I can see other things like similar notes. I can see, other links that are there. So yeah, so this there's still some optimizations to be done. I think this the bookmark here is not very intuitive. I want this to be following the browser as I switch tabs. But again, those things are something I'll work on. Other optimizations include, the way I'm doing the search using ML. That needs a little bit of fine tuning, because every time I make a new link, I have to, like, rerun the, re kind of build the features and everything else, which I need it to be real time. Yeah, so that concludes my talk. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if there are any questions. Thank you.